I have since become a saltwater man, but sometimes in summer, there are days when the restlessness of the tides, and the fearful cold of the seawater, and the incessant wind which blows across the afternoon and into the evening, make me wish for the placidity of a lake in the woods. E.B. White. Many years ago, I came across a story that had a profound impact on me and which I read many times. It took me back to another time. That story was Once More to the Lake by E.B. White, and it's about the time White took his son to a lake in the woods way back in 1941, the same lake that his father had taken him to almost 40 years before. It talks about how there was no time, how the years had never passed, how though some things had changed, the essence of life on the lake remained the same. For years I loved the pictures he painted, the narrative of unchanging time, and the way I could read his story and think about how things were different, yet still very much the same a long time ago. I loved it so much that one summer in August, I drove to Maine with my friend Max and stayed at Belgrade Lakes, the same group of lakes where White stayed. We woke up early and drove for nearly 12 hours, all the way from our town in Maryland to Messalonsky Lake, a lake near the one White stayed on that year he went to Belgrade with his son. We chose an off-the-grid cabin, though there was a shower that ran on electricity, and I did bring some solar panels and a battery. But for the most part, we were off the grid for a whole week. At first, we tried to make our own food, but we soon realized it would be better to just eat at restaurants. We found a Chinese buffet, but quickly grew tired of it after visiting several times. Then we found another Chinese buffet called Lucky Garden that looked out over a beautiful river. To this day, I haven't found a better Chinese buffet. One night, we sneaked into Bear Spring Camps, the place where White stayed in the 40s, and watched the moon hang over Great Pond. I got to thinking that maybe I should have stayed there instead of at the cabin on the other lake. After all, it wasn't much more expensive. One day, I crossed the entire lake. It took me about an hour in my kayak. I found an island in the middle of the whole thing, dished my boat, and went ashore. But I was back in the water before long. There wasn't much there. Another morning, we rented a John boat on Long Pond from Castle Island Camps and cast out for a few hours. The guy there told us we could have the boat for longer than we paid for, and we explored both sides of the lake and had a good swim. To this day, I wouldn't be surprised if Castle Island Camps has the cheapest boat rentals on the East Coast. Of course, we saw the famous lighthouse in Portland, and we ordered lobster rolls at Becky's Diner. Anyone who's been to Maine knows that you have to order lobster rolls when you're there, even if you're a Marylander who would rather eat crab. As we drove back to Maryland, both of us felt like Maine could have been a happier place. Maybe we should have planned the trip differently or brought more friends. Perhaps it was the lonely wilderness or the long miles between towns which made us feel this way. Or maybe it was because it felt similar to Maryland in a way, but less familiar. But still, looking back, I made some good memories, ones that I will remember for far longer than I would an ordinary week spent in Maryland. To this day, the memory of E.B. White's trip to the lake stays with me and reminds me of my own trips to the lake, the one I've been going to for my whole life near my home in Maryland. Maybe one day I'll take my own children to that lake too, and as an older man, remember the way things used to be.